Photographers, today I want to be honest with you about when I think it's time to go pro as a photographer. There are a lot of photography hacks online, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be negative, but this is true. There's a lot of people giving photography advice as if they were a professional photographer, when the reality is they're a YouTube photographer, not a photographer on YouTube. And I think this inauthenticity is very dangerous to people that are curious about pursuing this. If you're serious about getting into professional photography and you don't know what that really entails, then I would suggest you take a second to really look into what that lifestyle might be like. There are a lot of pitfalls pursuing this. First, it's incredibly difficult. You're in for a long road. Very few people are going to just say, hey, I'm a pro now and start booking gigs. It doesn't work that way. Unless you're wealthy, it takes years to build a full kit. I mean, my kit is probably worth over 20 grand. Do you guys think I could just drop 20 grand straight up? I started off as a professional photographer when I was 26. I just moved back to Los Angeles. I was living in another country, and I came in here, and a year later we had the worst recession of pretty much anyone's lifetime still living. And it wasn't easy. I didn't have a nickel to my name. And being able to afford my first camera was difficult enough, let alone all the different lenses I would need. And so what I had to do is slowly build it out. Eventually a new job would come up where I would need a lens I didn't own yet. And if I could manage to buy it, I'd buy it, and then I'd add that to my list. It's tough. So be prepared for that. The other thing I want to talk about is why I think you should become a professional photographer, or who is this for? Who's someone who should really pursue this? And I don't know what other people's answer will be. I'm gonna give you guys my answer, which is a bit different than probably a lot of the advice videos you're gonna get on YouTube, which probably focus on things like how much money you're making, etc. Mine is this: become a professional photographer if the idea of doing anything else makes you as angry as you are passionate for photography. For me, I didn't come from a privileged background. I started working in high school. That was my first job. I never stopped working. I had a college job. I worked right after. I hated every job I ever had. The idea of having someone looking over my shoulder, it killed me. In college, I worked at Best Buy, and the only saving grace of that job was that I really liked helping people. So I got to work in the digital imaging department, and so I got to talk to people about cameras. It's not bad, but everything else about that job I absolutely hated. I mean, I hated it, guys. Like, it was difficult to show up to work after a while. Eventually I didn't even return to my job. I just one day just stopped going. And no, it's not that simple. I have a strong work ethic. I would never just abandon my job, really. But I got really sick while traveling, and I was hospitalized for a while. And then one day they told me I abandoned my job while I was in the hospital. But anyway, every job I ever had, I hated the corporate structure. I hated even working nonprofit jobs. It wasn't for me because I knew I was capable of doing so much more than raising funds for good causes. Like, I knew I had something to say. I knew I needed to make images. I needed to create. And a lot of this is about my personality type. I have high traits of openness and creativity. And people like that, if they don't create, it's like living a hell. And so if your job is hell to you and you're passionate about photography, then maybe it's a good idea. But if you think you're going to make some money from this and that's the pursuit, if you just care about that, don't do it. There's better ways to make money than professional photography. Like, it's not a bad job, don't get me wrong. Making $250 an hour is not bad. And of course it depends on what kind of photography you're doing. But like event photography, that's about what I'll make an hour depending on the job. It's not bad, but you have to remember I have no stability. There's no stability in month to month. I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm always okay. But that said, there's always going to be a baseline anxiety when you haven't booked stuff for the next month, because you're always going to ask yourself, what if I don't book anything? It's always a question. And if you're good at planning, you have a nest egg and you're able to kind of save so that when you do really well, it's okay when you don't. You know, I've had months, and I'm telling you guys how hard this job is, and this is not a brag, but I've had a month where I made like 16,000, and then I've had a month where I maybe made 0, and it's tough. So you need to be prepared for that. I have some mixed feelings about, on one hand, non-full-time pros kind of oversaturate the market and make it harder for professionals. And if you get at the top of your game, you're going to be immune to a lot of the problems that other photographers suffer from. And that's for sure. If you're at the top of any field, you're doing okay. But for everyone else, the more photographers there are, the more saturated the market is. They're not making a full-time living off of it, so that they might shoot a job I need to quote $2,000 for $500, and that hurts. But at the same time, I have a lot of empathy, and I understand how hard being full-time is, and I don't blame someone for not going full-time. Having a job gives you a lot of security, and it's definitely the advice I give people now. I didn't do that. I was pursuing professional photography mostly starting in 2018 in a terrible recession, and I couldn't even find a job. You know, I couldn't find a job. But I started teaching, and although that never really was a part of my income, because you don't make a lot of money teaching photography. Even now I teach like 5 classes. I still don't make a ton of money. I do it because I love it. I'm passionate about that. But having that gave me some stability, not just financially, very little financially, but having something to do every day. That's another pitfall you need to be prepared for, is not having a boss is a double-edged sword. You do what you want every day. Like every day you get to wake up for the most part and decide, what do I want to do with my day? And if you're not an organized person, that can be very difficult. I don't know, I'm not knowledgeable enough about this particularly, but I suspect that creatives tend to not be very organized. I know I'm not. It's a battle to be organized. It's something I work at, and I've definitely improved, but it took a lot of work to get more organized, and I'm still fighting with myself, like how can I be more organized? Because I don't thrive in a box. I thrive very open when I'm able to decide what I want to do, but then you have to stay on top of it. It's really difficult. So I guess you can sum up this video by saying, pursue this if you're absolutely passionate about it and you need to do this. Like, you need to do this. You have no choice. This is what you're meant to do. If you believe that, pursue it. If you are passionate about this, you enjoy it, and you're like, why not make money off of it? Sure, that's great. And if you're, some people that might be enough. But I think you should hold on to your day job, at least for a little while, if you're only at that level. But for people like me, I had no choice. It's as simple as that. I had to create. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys and pretend that I was meant to take photographs for people. That's such a lie when photographers talk like that. I don't believe them. I'm just honest. I don't believe that your dream is to shoot someone's wedding. I like shooting weddings, don't get me wrong. I get to be really creative, and just for the record, I don't really shoot weddings anymore. I pretty much mostly shoot events now. But the idea, if I had $1 billion in the bank, would I shoot professionally? The answer is definitely no. I would probably volunteer my photography for the right causes, so I would shoot selective events. But would I shoot, some big corporate event for why? Why would I do that? I'm an artist. I want to create. And this is a way I get to create and make money from it, but it's not like the end-all be-all, and it's not perfectly satisfying my creative itch, which if you're watching my channel a lot, that's why I shoot a lot of film cameras. That's why I shoot for myself. I do a lot of street photography. Here and there, I pick up a new project. I've done this project with my dog. I've done a project with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, and that's more my passion and what my passion is. And I actually have a lot of projects in my mind that I'm pursuing that I don't want to talk about just yet, but I will in the future. All right, guys, that was a little bit long, but I kind of wanted to give you an off-the-cuff, like, honest talk about what it's like and to be a professional photographer and who I personally think it's for. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.